Thank you, Cam. We're ready for our banner processional to kick off March 16th Remembrance Stand Together.
Thank you so much, Luang Lei Lion Dancers. They were here all yesterday performing and just wanted to make sure that they gave respect, paid respects to the victims and the families of the March 16th shooting. So thank you so much for your performance. Next, we will be starting our dinner service, and I just wanted to provide just a few instructions for our dinner service before we begin our programming. We have the following options: vegetarian tofu and bulgogi beef options catered by Chef Chang, and we will have boba tea coming soon from Peachy Corners Cafe. Special thanks to all of our vendors who made the event possible today. We will have a brief 10-minute intermission, and I said 10-minute intermission, to pick up your meal boxes and boba will be coming shortly, just picking up your meal boxes before resuming our program. So we're going to ask that all of our guests return to their seats with their meals, and so that we can promptly begin our program. All volunteers, if you don't mind meeting us over at the food area so that we can go ahead and begin dinner service. And for the community members who are observing or it's fasting, please do let our teams know. We will be able to store the food in a specific location so that we can get to the food later on this evening. So we're going to ask all of our volunteers to go ahead and set up, but we're going to go ahead and have our teams on this side. Because I know it's going to take a little bit of a distance to get to the food. We're going to ask everyone to quickly and promptly pick up your meals. There are two tables of the same items. The white boxes are rice, and you have a vegetarian option and a beef bulgogi option. And please enjoy, and we'll come back in about 10 to 15 minutes. Okay? Thank you. Representative Longtran, we're going to invite you to the stage.
this audience follows instructions really well because everybody looks like they've grabbed their dinner box, and hopefully you all have had some boba as well, provided by Peachy Corners Cafe. And we will have Representative Longtran coming up shortly to continue emceeing our event. We hope you're enjoying your delicious meal.
Good evening, everyone. My name is Long Tran, State Representative here in Georgia, House District 80, which are the cities of Dunwoody, Doraville, and Chamblee. It's an honor to be here tonight. Wish it was for a more celebratory occasion, but it's important for us to remember what has happened 3 years ago. What I'd like to ask you to do as you finish your meal, we have a display over here to your right. The display, which you notice when entering into this room, is inspired by our theme of Stand Together. The history display is a collage created by Emory University's Asian Pacific Islander Desi Activist Association. The display honors our Asian American history, ancestors, and elders. It explains that the term Asian American was created in 1968 for various Asian communities in America to unite as one. This display speaks of the formation of ethnic studies and how the term Asian American was a chosen political term. So as you finish your meal, please join us over there to your right for a walkthrough of our Asian American history and an understanding of how the Asian American term began. There is also a poem over there called Mirrored Dreams, penned by Emory APIDAA member Vendethri Keitha. There is also a text excerpt from the book Teaching Asian American Elementary Classrooms, authored by Dr. Noreen Nassim Rodriguez, Dr. Sohan.
We will resume our programming in 2 minutes. We will resume our programming in 2 minutes, and we would like to cue up Commissioner Ben Koo. He will be next presenting a proclamation from Gwinnett County. Would ready himself to come up to the stage. We'd appreciate that. We are slightly rearranging our program to have the presentation of the Gwinnett County Proclamation before we have the rest of our program.
How about I hold this for you, and then after you say your words.
Yeah, mine will actually read the proclamation as part of it. So.
Okay. Can you do it from here, or do you need the podium?
I've got the talking points here, so if I could have the...
Okay, so let me introduce you.
Sure.
So it's fitting for us to have tonight's event held here in Gwinnett County, which has the largest AAPI population in Georgia. With an AAPI population of nearly 14%, it's fitting for us to have it here in Gwinnett County. So here to present the proclamation is the Honorable Ben Q, a trailblazer who was the first AAPI elected to serve on the Gwinnett County Commission.
Thank you so much. Good evening, everyone. As said, I am Gwinnett County District 2 Commissioner Ben Koo. I'd like to thank the Atlanta 316 Remembrance Committee, the Korean Community Center, and Asian Justice Movement for organizing this meaningful ceremony. 3 years ago, the Metro Atlanta region experienced one of the most tragic mass shootings in recent years. Today, we remember the 8 lives lost due to this act of violence. We continue to provide comfort for the victims' families, and as a region, we recommit to building communities where hate has no place. With 6 of the 8 victims being of Asian descent, this shooting is recognized not only as a tragic shooting, but as a hate crime. March 16, 2021 reminded us that while we've made tremendous progress in rooting out hate and bigotry, we still have work to do. Though we can't erase history, we're doing the work to ensure our future is one where people from all walks of life feel safe and supported. People can go to work, school, or places of worship and feel confident that they will return home. In the aftermath of the shootings, our Gwinnett Police Department partnered with Asian businesses to share best practices, maximize personal safety, and mitigate business risk. Today, the county continues to foster sustainable and trusted relationships with Gwinnett's AAPI communities. And since then, we've continued our focus on promoting the safety and well-being of all of our residents by investing in flock safety cameras, behavioral health units, and other intervention programs and services that keep our residents safe and help prevent crime. In Gwinnett, we've continued the intentional work to actively present a proclamation commemorating today's anniversary and remembering the victims of March 16th. Whereas, on March 16th, 2021, an act of senseless violence took the lives of 8 victims at 3 Atlanta area spas. And whereas 6 of the 8 victims were of Asian descent, which increased the growing concern for hate crimes against Asian Americans, and whereas in the aftermath of the shootings, people from all walks of life came together in solidarity to stand against hate crimes targeting Asian American and Pacific Islander communities, whereas in 2021, President Joe Biden signed the COVID-19 Hate Crimes Act into law, condemning xenophobia and addressing hate crimes throughout the COVID-19 pandemic, with a particular emphasis on stopping violence against Asian Americans. And whereas Gwinnett County is home to one of Georgia's largest and thriving Asian American communities, with 14% of Gwinnett residents representing various AAPI cultures, and whereas on the 3rd anniversary of the March 16th Atlanta spa shootings, Gwinnett residents and stakeholders stand together and lost on March 16th and support greater awareness about the Asian American experience, including cultural education, community organizing, and speaking out against hatred. Now, therefore, I, Ben Koo, on behalf of the Gwinnett County Board of Commissioners, do hereby commemorate the 3rd anniversary of the Atlanta spa shootings and remember the 8 victims who lost their lives, their families, communities, and local businesses impacted. Thank you.
And now we have some very special remarks from our federal officials. Please listen to these video messages recorded just for us from our 2 senators from Georgia, John Ossoff and Reverend Raphael Warnock. And we also have a message from Acting Secretary Julie Su from the U.S. Department of Labor, one of the highest ranking Asian American cabinet members in this administration.
Greetings, this is U.S. Senator John Ossoff, joining you in a spirit of sadness, of commitment, and of determination as we mark 3 years since the horrific murder of 8 Georgians, 6 Asian American women. 3 years ago, this brutal. We must redouble our commitments to the protection of every community in Georgia. Redouble our commitment to opposing hatred, discrimination, and violence against Asian Americans and against any community in our state, to support, to defend, to work with and on your behalf. Never hesitate to reach out. Please, please, please know that though I can't join you in person today, I stand with you in spirit. And let us honor and remember the loss of 8 people, far too young, under such conditions of brutality. Today we remember their loss and their passing.
Is not enough. There is still much more work to be done. So please know that my dedication to ending all forms of hate and prejudice is as strong as ever. As a pastor and senator for our great state on this incredibly difficult day, I send forth my prayers. Keep the faith and keep looking up.
As you gather tonight, I wanted to let you know that you do not grieve alone, you do not remember alone, and you do not heal alone. 3 years later, I know that the shock and grief don't just go away, especially since the anti-Asian hate that fueled the shooting that left 8 people dead grew in its aftermath. Delana, Xiaojie, Daoyou, Paul, Hyuncheng, Suncha, Sunjung, Young E. We say their names to remember them, not as faceless victims, but as whole people. A daughter who had a dream of becoming a business owner. Mothers who worked long hours so their kids could go to college. A woman who was looking forward to retirement after a lifetime of hard work. When people are attacked based on who they are, it makes the entire community fearful. When anti-Asian violence was growing in 2020 and 2021, my elderly parents, who live in California, became afraid to leave their home. In addition to the threat of COVID, they were afraid of being attacked. And even after the number of incidents decline, it can take a while to feel secure again. In the Biden-Harris administration, we believe that every community should feel secure. That's why President Biden signed a hate crimes bill in 2021. And that's why last year he signed the most significant gun safety law in nearly 30 years. We also believe that every worker should feel secure. HPI unity, a tragedy for Atlanta, and a tragedy for America. Though it takes time for a community to heal, gatherings like this one are so important to comfort one another, to feel secure together, and to build strength. Keep up the work of building a country so that the horror of 3 years ago is never, ever repeated.
As we come together as a community, it is important that elected officials stand with us during these times. If you're an elected official, doesn't matter if you're in Gwinnett or DeKalb, please take a stand and wave so that we can see you in the audience if you're an elected official. I see Robert Patrick. So, thank you for being here with us today. I'd also like to acknowledge our sponsors. This event to commemorate March 16th and center our families could not happen without the support and contributions of our partners and sponsors. Our dragon sponsor is Stand With Asian Americans. For those of you who don't know, Stand With Asian Americans is the largest coalition of Asian American entrepreneurs, investors, business leaders, and activists that are united in a mission to drive justice and equity for all. They have pledged $10,000 every year to underwrite and support March 16th commemoration events here in Atlanta. Our GOAT sponsor is Mike and Jamie Webb. They are the family members of Atlanta 316 victim Sao J. Tan. We will be hearing from Mr. Webb later in the program. Platinum sponsors, Atlanta Korean American Committee Against Hate, OCA Georgia, and Ms. Bonnie Yoon. Our GOAT sponsors are Buckhead Goats, the Georgia Asian Pacific American Bar Association, the GPABA Law Foundation, the Korean American Coalition of Atlanta, the law offices of Jongwon Lee, National Association of Chinese Americans, Voices of Muslims. Our silver sponsors are Asian American Voices for Education, our fiscal agent, Community Resources Corporation, Georgia AAPI Hub, the Korean American Bar Association of Georgia, the National Association of Asian American Professionals of Atlanta, Ramos and Law, Sarah Hamilton, and We Love Buford Highway. Once again, thank you to our sponsors, and please give them a round of applause. Now we have a special performance for everyone. Will Miss Annabelle Chen please come to the stage? Oh, okay. So, Miss Annabelle Chen is a 10th grade.
确定谁会是我的宿命，直到你的光晕在我黑夜降临。我从未如此相信，如此确定谁会是我的宿命，直到你的降临。原来这所有曾经只是作为背景，挣脱终将破晓的陷落于荒芜，仿佛不曾铭心刻骨，所有感触也随着时间模糊。我找寻什么？总在犹豫不决中，我从未如此相信，如此决定。谁会是我的宿命？直到你的光晕在我黑夜降临。我从未如此相信，原来这所有的情只是作为衬托我的宿命。直到你的光晕，原来这所有曾经只是作为衬托终将破晓的黎明，衬托终于破晓的黎明。
Thank you so much, Annabelle, for that lovely performance. It is now my pleasure to introduce the Honorable Erica Mortsugu, Deputy Assistant to the President and Asian American and Native Hawaiian Pacific Islanders Senior Liaison. She'll be delivering special remarks from herself as well as the Vice President, Kamala Harris. And I just wanted to take time to introduce her because she is such a phenomenal woman. Erica was appointed by President Joe Biden in April 2021 to serve as Deputy Assistant to the President and Asian American and Native Hawaiian and Pacific Islander Senior Liaison. At the White House, Erica supports the administration on a wide array of the President's priorities and engages with the Asian American and Native Hawaiian Pacific Islander communities and leaders on important issues such as advancing safety, justice, inclusion, and opportunity for Asian American, Native Hawaiian, and Pacific Islander communities throughout the whole of government approach to social justice. Her past government services include serving as the Assistant Secretary for Congressional and Intergovernmental Relations at the Department of Housing and Urban Development under leadership of Secretary Julian Castro in the Obama administration, and was the first ever Senate Deputy Legislative Director of the Consumer Financial Protective Bureau. All in addition to her work on the Capitol Hill and working and being a part of several nonprofits. We thank you for your service and often behind-the-scenes work that you do to uplift our Asian American and Native Hawaiian Pacific Islander communities across the nation. Please give a warm welcome to Deputy Assistant to the President and Asian American Native Hawaiian Pacific Islander Senior Liaison, Erica Mortsugu.
Victoria, thank you so much, Sister and Commissioner. I'm actually the third Biden-Harris administration official to appear before you on this somber but also healing moment. Victoria Nguyen actually serves as the President's Advisory Commissioner for Asian American, Native Hawaiians, and Pacific Islanders, and it's an honor to serve with you in the Biden-Harris administration and in community and in sisterhood, so thank you very much. Thank you all for the opportunity to share this space with you tonight. And thank you to our government officials here and the community leaders who've organized us, including Victoria, Bonnie, Cam, Michelle, Sarah, Mritzawa, Omnia, and so many more. I won't dare to name you all, every single one of you. But there's also a very special thank you to the families and victims of horrific hate and violence in our communities. Mike and your beloved daughter, Jamie, on behalf of the families, you've been a voice for so many others. And to our keynote speakers, Tita, Vilma, and her beloved daughter, and my adopted sister, Elizabeth, our very special Shiros. It is to you and for us, each of us, that it is my honor to present a statement from Madam Vice President Kamala D. Harris. Asif, can you throw Boss's picture up? It's okay. Pretend there's a picture of the first ever woman, Black, and Asian vice president serving in one of the highest offers in the land. Nope, we're still not there. I forgive you, Asif. This is dated today, March 16th, 2024. Today, the city of Atlanta and the entire nation remembers the horrific shootings that took place 3 years ago. Doug and I join you in honoring those who lost their lives, thinking of the injured, and recommitting ourselves to achieving a future free from gun violence, fear, and hate. On March 16th, an act of senseless gun violence took the lives of innocent victims. As we honor and remember those individuals who lost their lives and support the survivors and their families, we recognize that hate-fueled violence must not prevent us from fulfilling our nation's promise of freedom and justice for all. In America, no matter who you are, no matter where your ancestors came from, you should be able to go to work or walk down the street and feel safe. That is why President Biden and I have continued our work to advance measures to address gun violence and keep our children and communities safe. Together, we fought to enact the first major gun safety law in nearly 30 years and we launched the first ever White House Office of Gun Violence Prevention, an office that I oversee. We are also dedicated to advancing justice and assuring safety for Asian Americans, Native Hawaiians, and Pacific Islanders. In the wake of this tragedy, President Biden signed legislation to address the rise in hate crimes, especially against Asian American, Native Hawaiians, and Pacific Islanders during the COVID-19 pandemic. Even still, our nation is experiencing hate, gun violence, and a dramatic rise in discrimination against AAN and HPIs. Our administration remains committed to ensuring all people across our country can live free from violence and fear. We are grateful to have you all as partners in this work as we advocate for every member of the AAN and HPI community. Let us rededicate to joining together to help our communities prevent, respond, and recover from acts of hateful violence. When we stand together, we show the world that we all have so much more in common than what separates us. And this is signed Kamala D. Harris.
Erica, I wanted to reinvite you back up to the stage so we can show the presentation of the letter to Mike Webb. If you might want to come back to the stage. Mike is one of our Atlanta 316 family members. He is former spouse of Xiaojie Tan. Stand up there.
Mike, on behalf of the Biden-Harris administration and Madam Vice President Kamala Harris, I present this to you on behalf of the families and especially for, there she is, Jamie. Please let her know we love her.
Thank you.
Thank you, Erica and Michael. We'll be hearing from Mike later. It is now my pleasure to welcome Consul General Sang Pyo-seo of the Consulate of the Republic of Korea in Atlanta. I actually ran into him at the Capitol on Thursday after our March 16 press conference. So the Atlanta Consulate services 6 Southeast states: Georgia, Alabama, Florida, North Carolina, South Carolina, and Tennessee, as well as the Commonwealth of Puerto Rico and the U.S. Virgin Islands. Consul General Seo is actually no stranger to Atlanta. He attended a master's program at Georgia State University for a year. Before assuming this post last year in July, he previously served as South Korea's ambassador to Pakistan for almost 3 years. So we'll test your Urdu. He has also served in the Korean delegation to the OECD in Paris, within the embassy in the Republic of Gabon in Africa, and at the United Nations in New York. Please give a warm welcome to Consul General Seo. 환영합니다.
Thank you for very welcoming for me tonight. Good evening. First of all, I would like to extend my sincere gratitude to the ASEAN Justice Movement and other civic groups for bringing us together tonight to show our unwavering resolve to fight against hate crimes and violence. And I also thank Deputy Assistant to the President of the United States, Erica Moritsugu, who she came down a long way from Washington to here. And I see that the Georgia House Congressman, long time, and I met Ben Koo, Guinea Commissioner, and all the participants for their presence here tonight. Before I make remarks, allow me to offer my deepest condolences to the families who lost their loved ones in the tragic incident that happened on March 16, 2021. We know during the COVID-19 pandemic, we witnessed a disturbing surge in hate crimes and violence targeting Asian Americans across this country. And hateful acts of violence still linger in this society. As a nation founded by the immigrants, the United States embraces diversity and has cherished the freedom for all as fundamental values that have propelled its progress and prosperity. But hate crimes rooted in racial or ethnic prejudice strike at the very heart of these founding principles. We know that such crimes not only endanger individuals, but also undermine stability and unity of this community where we live. So tonight's event that aims to enhance public awareness in combating hate crimes is a very important initiative we need to push ahead together. The Korean Consulate, in solidarity with our communities and working closely with the U.S. federal government and the Georgia state government and civic groups as well, is committed to fight against standing together to combat hateful acts of violence in all its forms. Thank you.
Thank you, Consul General Saw. And now we welcome our AAPI community leaders to come to speak. Omnia Abdelgawad is an advisory board member to multiple Muslim community-focused organizations. She is chairwoman of the board of Noor Family Services, which provides pro bono legal assistance and support to survivors of domestic violence. She also serves on the advisory board of ITAR, a nonprofit that provides refugee services. She is a graduate of the Islamic Speakers Bureau Leadership Institute, which cultivates leaders with a purpose. Now, she wears so many hats. She's a former software engineer. She's a successful entrepreneur with her own beauty business. She's a professional executive, and now she's also a life and grief coach. We welcome Omnia.
Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. In the name of God, the most compassionate, the most merciful. I started with the opening statement in the Quran and the fundamental belief in Islam. I cannot think of anything more fitting than the need for compassion and mercy. We live in unprecedented times of geopolitical unrest, from elections, supply chain disruptions, pandemics, labor shortages, wars in Gaza and in Ukraine, to repeated news of mass killings and violence. It's been scientifically proven that these events take a severe toll on our mental health of our communities and the individuals alike, leading to a rise in racism, hate crimes, discrimination, depression, anxiety, chronic pain, and loss of sleep. And we saw that this firsthand in the hate crimes against the Asian communities since the pandemic, the violence against the African American population since, and the Islamophobia through the dehumanization and justification of the brutal killing of Palestinians in Gaza. As we gather here today to remember the unjustified and tragic loss of innocent lives in 2021 shooting, I offer my sincere condolences to the families of the victims. They continue to live on in the hearts and minds of our communities. I urge all of our communities to stand together and extend compassion and mercy to each other as one of many proven ways to heal from trauma and resolve mental health issues. I would like to end with the Islamic greeting, peace be upon you all. Thank you.
It is now my great pleasure to introduce a wonderful friend and organizing colleague of mine. She worked tirelessly to make sure that the Korean Community Center was ready today. Sarah Park, president of the Korean American Coalition of Atlanta. She is an accomplished and influential leader in community advocacy, known for her dedication to enhancing civic engagement within Georgia's Korean American community. As president of KAC, she has spearheaded numerous community advocacy efforts, including co-chairing the Southeast United States Korean Census Complete Count Committee, say that fast many times, and serving on the Advancing Justice Atlanta Victim Fund Working Group and Steering Committee for the Families and Victims of March 16th Atlanta spa shootings. Sarah is also currently working for Gwinnett County as a special projects coordinator and executive assistant to the communications director. I give you Sarah Park.
As the president of the Korean American Coalition of Metro Atlanta, and as someone who shares our collective sorrow and resolve, I extend my heartfelt condolence to profound respect to the victims, their families, and survivors of that tragic day. Their memories compel us to act to honor their legacy through our unwavering commitment. Today, we unite not just in remembrance of the lives we lost, but in a reaffirmation of our collective resolve and the shared value that binds us as a community and a nation. It is a day to honor the resilience and the unity that rose from that despair, a testament to our unbreakable spirit. 3 years ago, senseless violence shook the very foundations of our community, leaving behind a legacy of loss and sorrow. Yet, in the wake of such darkness, we, alongside numerous individuals and organizations, stood together, channeling our grief into a powerful force for change. Our efforts have sparked a vital movement to elevate awareness and advocacy for Asian American Pacific Islander communities, both in Atlanta and across the nation. Despite our progress, our journey towards healing and unity remains ongoing. Stand together is more than rallying cry. It's a call to action for everyone here. leaders, community members, young and old, media professionals, and all who calls Atlanta and U.S. home, to transform our shared grief into a pillar of a strength. It's a commitment to honor the victims with legacy that transcend tragedy, embedding the lessons of March 16 into our collective action and policies. We are called to embrace our diversity, our greatest strengths, by breaking down the barriers that divide us and protecting the vulnerable among us. As we reaffirm our commitment to stand together today, let us gather and serve as a powerful declaration of our dedication to a future where hate finds no place in Atlanta or anywhere else. A future where every individual, regardless of their background, feels safe, valued, and loved. It is a pledge to maintain the spirit of unity, to transform our pain into a force that ensures the community grounded in love, respect, and justice. In this spirit, I urge each of you to take action. Please go vote. Continue to build the bridges, bring awareness and consensus, demand impactful policies, and engage civically. Talk to those that need to close the gap. Empower, inform, and please share resources. Stand up for the vulnerable population among us, for it is in these actions that our true strength as a community is revealed. In closing, I want to express my profound gratitude to many of you here for embodying the spirit of stand together. Your unwavering commitment is a foundation upon which we build a community that not only honors those we lost, but also pave the way for a future where diversity, peace, inclusivity are celebrated. Yet, let us not forget that the fight is far from over. Acts of hatred towards the API community and others still surface, reminding us the need for consistent vigilance and ongoing commitment to eradicate hate from our society. Thank you all once again for standing together today and every day. Together, we will continue to build a legacy of unity and compassion, facing any challenges with collective strengths that lights the way for future generations. Let's continue to build a community that stands as a testament to the power of unity in the face of adversity. Thank you.
Thank you, Sarah. I'd like to quickly recognize another state representative who just arrived. Rep. Michelle Au, will you please give a wave to the audience? So now we're going to hear from some of our community leaders, a family member of the 316, one of the 316 victims, and our keynote speaker, who is a hate crime survivor. But I'd like to talk about some sobering statistics. According to a November 2023 study by the Pew Research Center, 58% of Asian Americans report experiencing discrimination. Asian American communities face critical issues including workplace discrimination, mental health concerns, and lack of political representation. The national commemoration of the Atlanta spa shootings represents how the Asian American communities are committed to turning a shared experience and trauma into power. Last year, the FBI released new hate crime statistics. They are traumatic to our community. Over a third of Asian Americans said they made changes in their daily schedule or routine over the previous year due to worry about being threatened or attacked. Only 19% of them believe their local elected officials were doing a very or somewhat good job of dealing with violence against Asian Americans. 2 years ago, on the first anniversary of the Atlanta spa shootings, survey conducted revealed that 16% of Asian Americans and 14% of Native Hawaiian and Pacific Islander adults had experienced a hate incident since the beginning of 2021. These proportions suggested that nearly 3 million AAPI adults had experienced a hate incident within about a year. With these sobering statistics, I'd like now to ask a family member of one of our 316 victims to come up and say a few words. Mr. Mike Webb. Michael Webb is a successful businessman and contractor who now lives in Florida. He's the former husband of Sao Jae Tan, and he adopted her daughter, Jamie. He first met Tan in the early 2000s while traveling in the southern Chinese city of Nanning. Neither spoke the other's language well, but that didn't stop the pair from falling in love. They married in 2004, and although they split in 2012, they maintained a close and cordial relationship, especially for their daughter, Jamie. Michael helped to remodel Tan's spa's business, Young's Asian Massage, during the pandemic. He recalled she'd always say, "We family." Even when we got divorced, she'd say that, because that's how she was. Mr. Michael Webb.
Thank you. Although Jamie couldn't be here today, she sends her love and gratitude as always. 3 years ago, at almost exactly this time of day, my family's life changed forever. I stand before you tonight because the horrible tragedy of 316 has given me a voice. And as long as I have a voice, I intend to use it. Tonight is a celebration of the Asian community's strength. Tonight we continue to demand change. Tonight we stand together as one to stop Asian violence and hate. We must never give up. We must speak for those victims of violence and hate who can no longer speak. I'm so thrilled to see all the youth being represented here tonight. So to the young people that can hear my voice, we need you to help us. There's no possible way we can win this fight without your help. Today, as I prepared for this event, I watched videos of Vilma Kari being brutally attacked in New York City. I couldn't help but being angry and ashamed because people of my race stood by and allowed it to happen. Ms. Kari, I'm honored to share the stage with you tonight. And hear this loud and clear. You belong here. In closing, I want to remind everyone that this is an election year. We must work together in our communities every day to effect positive change. But we must also fight this fight at the ballot box. If you are 18 years or older and you're not registered to vote, I ask you to please register. And if you're not 18 years old, I ask you to please help someone to register to vote. Remember, we need you to help us. Then we must show up in force on election day, and be heard. Thank you.
And now comes one of the highlights of our event for the evening. Our keynote speakers, Vilma and Elizabeth Kari. They are Filipino American, and with love, I will address Vilma as Tita, an honorific meaning auntie in Tagalog. On March 29, 2021, just a few days after our March 16th shooting, Tita Vilma was walking to church when she was brutally attacked in New York City. Video footage of the attack went viral. You may remember that terrible video showing her attacker stomping on her in Times Square. What you didn't hear was her attacker cursing at her, saying, "You don't belong here, you Asian." He beat her so violently that Tita Vilma, then 65, was left with serious pelvic fractures. That same video also showed the apathy and apparent indifference of bystanders. Instead of rushing out to her aid, we saw a doorman who witnessed the incident closing the door. Last month, Tita Vilma's attacker was sentenced to 15 years under the New York hate crimes statute, and she was able to confront and address her attacker at sentencing. So her story is extremely powerful and relevant to our event today. Tita Vilma was born and raised in the Philippines to a political family. When she first came to the US, she worked at the Philippine consulate in Chicago as a trade analyst. A few years later, she married and gave birth to her only daughter, Elizabeth, known affectionately by her nickname, Liz. Liz was born and raised in the western suburbs of Chicago, and she moved to New York City to pursue her bachelor's degree in economics, a minor in business studies, and an associate's degree in liberal arts for New York University. She has been working in the fashion industry for 13 years and is currently a senior director of merchandising for a luxury Italian house. In light of the increased attacks on the API community and the deep emotional outpour of love and support that they received following the attack, Liz was inspired to create a platform online called AAPI Belong, which is a safe and anonymous platform where the AAPI community and allies can share stories of encounters with anti-Asian hate or words of encouragement. Tita Vilma has spoken about her attack to encourage others to report crimes. In sharing her stories, she hopes to spark self-reflection, community conversations, and provide general AAPI education to the public. Now, sharing her stories today, it is a difficult and traumatic recollection of what happened. If you feel the need to grieve, if you feel emotionally overcome, we need to provide space for you to mentally process these stories. And we can ask that you can step to the room on the left if you need some time to collect yourselves. We welcome to the stage Vilma and Elizabeth Kari.
Well, good evening, all. It is with a warm but heavy heart that we are here before you today to commemorate the lives lost here in Atlanta 3 years ago. But we also know that what was lost was more than just lives. It was family members, mothers, sisters, friends, colleagues, and our community. While we didn't know you at the time, the pain of this event, your pain, reached across the country. Mom and I watched from NYC in shock as the news unfolded, and we were heartbroken to learn that an evil act had claimed the lives. We hardly had a moment to realize what was happening to our AAPI community when less than 2 weeks later, Mom was on the news for her own anti-Asian hate attack. As we stand together today, what do we share? I think we can all agree that March 2021 was filled with tears, and a chapter of our lives was abruptly shut, leading to a new, damaged beginning. Even with what we've lived through in these 3 years we share, I can only imagine your pain to a point, because my mother is still here, and I will never take that for granted. I have no words, so I give you me and my voice to make sure that this pain and the unspoken pain of so many others that have experienced and lost to the hands of hate do not pass through history in vain. That we remember not the sadness that has occurred, but remember the spirit of the community that gathered. And look around. Do you know the person on either side of you? Do you know what you all share? A reason for coming out tonight, a beautiful Saturday night, sharing it with each other. You are in a room of people that want humanity, love, compassion for one another. You are who I am honored to spend my Saturday night with. Right, Mom? Recently, Mom and I closed a chapter, and last month we faced Mom's attacker sentencing. She delivered her impact statement for the court record, making it the first time she was able to share all of the details of her story in 3 years. 3 years of holding every detail close in mind, not knowing when we would be summoned to call upon these painful memories in court. And if I do say so myself, Mom did a fantastic job making sure that everyone in that courtroom knew what she endured and how it had changed her, our community's lives, how it has shaped both our fears, but also our strength, endurance, and resilience. The attacker, Mr. Elliott, apologized for what he had done and admitted it was wrong. I'm honestly still processing how I completely feel about it. I wanted to hate him, but by the end of his childlike apology, I felt sorry for him. Who can murder their own mother and mentally be okay to be let out of prison? And this is where we share another connection. Both our attackers point to mental illness. These are people that should be getting help or shouldn't be out on the streets. Damaged individuals that our loved ones were unlucky to meet on their bad day. Mental illness is an epidemic in our country, and a 2023 poll noted that 90% of Americans feel that we are in a mental health crisis, and they're right. A Health Forum report also notes that 38% more people are in mental health care since the onset of the pandemic than before. So this is where I point a finger back at us, community. Why are we 3 to 4 times less likely to seek mental health services? Why is it that only 8.6% of Asian Americans sought any type of mental health services, 10 points behind the national general average? Now I ask you, and just think about the answer to yourself, how closely are you paying attention to your mental health? Because you're here, I know you have the capacity to feel deeply and care about something. Are you caring for yourself? It's been a long 3 years. Are we talking to one another? Are we sharing our stories? Are we taking up space and being heard? Are we reporting? Are we resting? From what I've picked up on in my accidental activism in this time is that the answer is not a definitive yes or no. It lies somewhere in between. But let's agree that with each day, we will push forward to get closer to that yes. So tonight, we invite you to share your stories with us. But to make it a little easier, we'll go first. So please welcome my mom, Vilma Carey. She shares her story.
Thank you, everyone. My story begins on a Monday morning of March 29, 2021, exactly 13 days after this tragic event here in Atlanta. I was visiting my cousin's apartment on West 43rd Street near Times Square when I decided to look up a church and attend a noon mass in the neighborhood before heading home. The church I had Googled was one avenue and one street over. I had the option of taking one of two routes to get there. The one I chose almost immediately put me in my attacker, Brandon Elliott's path. I had just strolled a few steps from my cousin's residence when I saw Mr. Elliott walking towards me and heard him yell, "F you, Asian, you don't belong here." And then he kicked me. I fell on the ground. I could feel the porous, rough texture of cement and the equally rough impact of the bottom of his shoe repeatedly on my head. Back and forth, pain, shock, and confusion radiated through my body. It felt like an eternity. In that moment, my life flashed before me. I wasn't ready to die, and I didn't understand why he was doing this to me. I tried to open my mouth, to scream, to plead with him to stop, but I could not. Just when I thought this might be my end, I heard another voice, a savior, the only person who came to my rescue. "Hey man, what are you doing?" My attacker was distracted. I tried to move, to get away, but the radiating pain from all over my body continued, and I knew that if his attention turned back to me, I wouldn't be able to run. I prayed that he would not resume his attack. As I lay on the ground, I saw my attacker walk towards the Good Samaritan. I was not aware at the time, but Mr. Elliott was carrying a knife. This part of the story could have ended very differently. It took me a moment to understand what had just transpired. I saw my phone a few feet away and crawled to it. I wanted to call 911. I summoned all my strength to get up. Then I saw two men in black suits. They asked me how I was, but my first response was to implore them, "Could you please take a picture of that man?" I wanted to capture the moment so I have evidence. By then, Mr. Elliott was walking away with his back to us. The two men just looked at him and did not do anything. They asked me to go inside the building, but before I could take a step, a police patrol car arrived on the scene. Later, I found out that there was no official 911 call. It was just by chance that a patrol car had rolled down the street and came upon the scene. I begged the police, "Please, I need an ambulance. I have to go to the emergency room." I was so worried about internal bleeding and had no idea what the extent of my injuries were. They asked me to get in the car. I needed assistance. I was not okay. As I moved towards the car, I felt excruciating pain in my body every time I took a step. I asked one of the police officers to help me while the other went to ask questions to the men. Then the police officers drove me around the block a few times in the hope that I could still spot my attacker, Mr. Elliott, from among the crowd in Times Square. I had no success. As the time passed, the fears of internal bleeding unsettled me. Would I make it to the hospital in time to survive this? I pushed aside the thoughts and called my daughter who was at work. When she did not initially answer my call, I sent her text, "Call me, I've been attacked." She jumped off her meeting and we made a plan to meet at the hospital where the ambulance was taking me. In the emergency room, I feared my death. My only thought was for God to spare my life. I was surrounded by nurses, doctors, EMTs, police officers, other patients, but yet I felt alone, cold, scared, confused. My daughter arrived as the barrage of questions towards me continued. When I repeated the words that Mr. Elliott yelled at me prior to being attacked, I saw eyebrows raised. We were then told to wait. Hate Crimes Task Force would be coming to speak with us. Then the questions continued. Even while I was still being wheeled from one examination room to another, again and again, I repeated my story while waiting to know if I would even be okay. Would I live to tell it again tomorrow? Finally, the police and detectives left. My daughter sat by my side, assuming the role of my guardian, as we learned that I had multiple fractures in my pelvis, a broken rib, and several contusions across my body and my head. But I would live. After many hours since that morning, I sighed a small sigh of relief. My injuries, while excruciatingly painful, did not require surgery, so I had the possibility to be discharged the next day. But we were not ready for what was next. As I lay in bed, trying to get some rest, my cell phone rang. It was a reporter asking me to confirm my name. I simply said I was not interested and hung up. Little did I know that the video of my attack was racing across the internet and that I was being sought out by media. The next day brought even more confusion. I was asked by police to ID my attacker, interrupting the nursing staff as we were preparing to care for my injuries at home. But home was not an immediate relief either. Upon arriving to the front of our building, we found media planted at our entrance. This required that I be brought in through a basement side entrance, one that had stairs that I was unable to climb. I had to resort to being put piggyback on one of the officers that escorted us home. Once in the apartment, the challenges continued. My name had been shared with the media. Reporters were beelining directly to our front door. My privacy was taken. We were afraid to leave the apartment, afraid of who was waiting outside or even down the hallway. Phone calls from across the globe, nonstop, calling my daughter and me. Calls of cries, tears, pain, fears of my death. Everyone trying to get a piece of me as I couldn't even find my own peace. Finding comfort in sleep was a challenge due to the constant pain in my body and the flashbacks in my mind. I had to give up my independence and allow my daughter to be my body, to carry me step by step, to feed me, to dress me, to bathe me, and to emotionally shield me from the video of my attack and the media onslaught. She became my emotional and physical guardian, as I had deep fear to go outside, even accompanied, and still do to this day. As a consequence of this attack, I have fear going out alone, fear riding the subway, fear being around people, and fear will always linger. I don't know how long it will take for me to feel free again, to feel the joy of venturing out alone and exploring the city on my own without being afraid. It's as if I am a prisoner of my own fear because of his actions. Mr. Elliott, my attacker, was on parole when he committed the crime of attacking me. We have heard of so many cases like mine. I hope that our justice system does not let this cycle continue. It took months for my physical injuries to heal, but the emotional and mental injuries that the attack inflicted on me are still ongoing. To this day, I wonder, why me? Why me? I give credit to my daughter Liz for shielding me from the news and video while recuperating. She made sure that I was ready to watch it. When I finally saw it, I could not believe that it was me. It felt so surreal. I looked at the tiny woman being attacked. With tears in my eyes, I thought to myself, how could he do this to her? Those images were indelibly seared into my mind, so much so that I felt like crawling under a rock. I would wake up in the morning, crying and questioning my faith. What did I do to deserve this? What have I done? I felt the humiliation and stigma of being a victim. We have this term in Tagalog called hiya, meaning shame. I was ashamed of myself. I did not want my name to be out there, to be associated with shame. But I finally came to the realization that all shame are not equal, that being a victim is not to be ashamed of. I have done nothing wrong. A very good explanation came from a dear friend who is a priest. He said, Vilma, don't ever blame yourself. It was not your fault. It was his fault. Those words gave me comfort. I realized that all of us have stories of shame to tell. We keep them in the dark recesses of our minds and in the deepest part of our hearts, not knowing when to eventually share them. But once we let them out, we heal ourselves. It is a cathartic feeling. We cannot totally eradicate hate and violence, especially against minorities and people of color such as ours. But we can change the perception through awareness and education, through our shared stories of encounters with hate and racism, because your stories and my story become our story as a people and as a community, which then can shed light about our pain, our struggles, our hope. And so to be invited on this 3rd anniversary of community gathering to honor the memory of those who lost their lives here in Atlanta and those whose lives have changed forever because of this tragic event. It is a great honor for me. We all share a bond that none of us wanted. We were victimized because of what we looked like, but some of us are survivors who lived to see the next day. May my presence and vulnerability continue to encourage others to amplify their voices and seek justice, and to also not be afraid to share these stories. We stand together. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, Mom, for sharing with us again. What Mom didn't always get to see while she was healing was that there was a community forming around her. When the incident happened, I had created a GoFundMe account to let everyone know that I was with my mom and that she would be okay. The response was an overwhelming amount of love, support, prayers, and stories. Thousands of strangers writing me that they were sorry for what we were going through, that my mom reminded them of their mom or tita, or that they themselves or a relative had experienced a hate attack either in the pandemic or the decades before. I was so touched by this flood of warmth from anonymous strangers that I felt lifted and empowered to share it forward with others. How could I recreate that GoFundMe inbox with the world? This is where our nonprofit, AAPI Belong, was born. A platform to share anonymous stories of encounters with anti-Asian hate or words of encouragement. We hope that for some, sharing these anonymous stories will create a sense of catharsis and can be that first step towards seeking mental health resources that we know are needed. On the flip side, we repurpose these stories to share with the community via online posts or in-person pop-up exhibitions. Our aim is to shed awareness on AAPI discrimination and cultural challenges while using our story to help spark reflection, community conversation, and general education. Our collective stories bring our experiences together, and tonight we stand together and stand stronger because of it. I'll close by sharing one last story, the one that truly triggered the creation of AAPI Belong in my mind. One evening following bringing Mom home from the hospital, I received an anonymous GoFundMe email. The person was writing me because she saw what had happened to my mom on the news, and her mother in 1970 in New York City had been attacked physically in a similar manner. Her attacker had taken an item from her that had been registered in her name. And when the police picked him up later, by chance, he still had the item on him and was able to be traced back to the mother. Many years later, the writer herself noted that she had been a victim of an attack, and her attacker was caught by DNA. She is now an older woman, and her attacker is almost set to be released from prison. She was writing me to let me know that she was there for me, not only as a victim, but as a daughter of one. That letter meant everything to me. Someone could sort of relate. So here today, I can say that while I have not lived your exact pain, we are here for you, and we can share our experience with you. We are honored to be able to spend this evening with you and look forward to our continued connection to stand together. Thank you.
Can you stand and take a photo?
Thank you to Tita Vilma Kari and Elizabeth Kari for sharing your strength, your courage, and your story. And I know many of our hearts connected, and so I just want to invite you to take 3 breaths with me as a community. Breathe in. Breathe out. Breathe in. Breathe out. Last one, breathe in. Breathe out. Thank you. And I'll pass it back to Representative Longtran.
Thank you, Victoria. I did want to quickly recognize Commissioner Kirkland Dion. He's a Gwinnett County Commissioner. At this time, we'd like to bring out, I'd like to ask Michelle Kang to come up on stage. Thank you so much, Tita Vilma and Liz, for sharing your stories. Speaking of sharing our stories, now we want to hear from a different demographic perspective and share the stories of our Asian American youth. Michelle Kang will now present the 3 finalists of an AAPI Youth Speech Contest, culminating in a prize of $500. This will be followed by a panel discussion featuring 6 high school students of diverse ethnic heritage. To introduce the speech competition and youth panel, I'd like to ask Lena Hove from Peachtree Ridge, and this is Michelle Kang.
Hi, everyone. Thank you very much for your patience. My name is Michelle Kang. I'm one of the founder of the Atlanta Korean American Committee Against Asian Hate. Our committee holds the significant importance. We swiftly formed this organization in response to the tragic events of the March 16 Atlanta shootings. This marked the establishment of the first Korean American organization in Georgia that boldly advocates for racial and social justice. During a press conference with the national media outlets just 2 days after the shootings, we demanded action from federal, state, and local government, as well as law enforcement agencies to protect our lives and businesses from Asian hate crimes. In organizing the Stop Asian Hate Vigil a week after the shootings, we made a deliberate effort to invite people from various backgrounds, including Black, Latinx, Muslim, immigrant, and people of color communities, fostering solidarity and unity against racial hatred and discrimination. Additionally, we facilitated public discussion titled, Why We Need to Include Asian American History in K-12 Curriculum. It became evident that educating Americans about the rich history and contribution of Asian Americans, Native Hawaiian, and Pacific Islanders over 200 years was crucial. However, despite our significant contributions, AA and HPI individuals have often been scapegoated during the national disaster, including the pandemic. Last December, when we started organizing the 3rd commemoration, we thought about our Asian American student. We want our children to speak out against Asian hate and share their experience as Asian Americans. We want to hear about their daily struggles in coping with microaggressions and overt discrimination. In a time when hatred, bigotry, and xenophobia prevail nationally and racial division worsen, Asian high school students, we want to hear from Asian high school students about their vision beyond Stop Asian Hate. Now, we would like to start the first part, speech contest. We have the top 3 contestants from the applicant. I want to welcome the first student to speak. His name is Andy Tran. He's attending Parkview High School in 12th grade.
For as long as I could remember, I hated wearing my clothes. As the actor's wife stormed off the stage, the crowd erupted. Her long, split tunic, tight across the torso and looser to the ground, flowed like her straight black hair. Her pair of baggy silk pants fluttered to her dash after vowing to leave the marriage. Her dress, áo dài, is a traditional clothing in the Vietnamese people, and for a long time, I believe that was all my people could craft. This was a typical scene in the many DVDs of Paris by Night, where overseas Vietnamese families reconnect to their homeland through music and theater in the comfort of their living rooms. While the women exuded elegance, it was not true for men. Our áo dài is sewn differently. Pair it with skinny jeans, and you'll look like a cardboard box. To quote Little Me, "Boys' áo dài look ugly." As a second-generation Vietnamese immigrant, my interests reflected my diverse community. Whether it was making Korean kimchi in my garage, touring Congolese villages on Google Maps, or interviewing my Guyanese friend about his ethnic origins, I loved learning about our planet. Growing up as a Vietnamese American, whose parents came to America for very different reasons, the resulting generational gaps disconnected me from my Vietnamese identity. What was the difference between Bánh Chưng and Bánh Tét? What religion were we? And why did my mom leave everything behind in 2002 for my dad, known in the Socialist Republic as reactionary? I would ask my parents these questions in their native tongue if I could dismantle our language barrier. How can I reclaim my Vietnameseness? Step 1, use the internet. Practice tone charts and play Vietnamese popular music. Analyze fan dance videos. Learn to use banana leaves to steam and steam bánh nhã. Start pen paling. Step 2, practice the language. Remind your mom you're going for a walk, going to volunteer, or reminiscing when you were scared of rambutans because they resembled evil sea urchins from SpongeBob SquarePants. Then do fan dances at International Night. Step 3, be cultured, right? Wrong. Breaking news. Vietnamese Australian K-pop celebrity canceled in Vietnam due to familial ties with the South. But the war ended 48 years ago. This scandal reopened political wounds and nationalistic sentiment on internet forums, unfortunately coinciding with the rise of Asian culture and music in the West. Whether the Southern capitalists or the Northern communists were correct, it didn't matter. Then, I remember that Paris by Night was a cultural byproduct of refugees like my dad. It reminded me of when I used to hate men's áo dài until I realized there was a gap in my cultural knowledge. What did my clothing look like? Enter Viet Phục. Beyond áo dài, Viet Phục describes Vietnamese traditional clothing. With over 4,000 years of history, Viet Phục reflects our unique heritage coming into contact with different technologies and resources. The most awe-inspiring is the áo tắc. Think áo dài maximalist brother, with baggy sleeves and vibrant motifs woven through silk brocade. Nowadays, while some may call that streetwear, Vietnamese people back then called it the royal attire. Other features of the Nguyen dynasty attire include dragons, phoenixes, wrap skirts, and jade buttons for women's áo nhật bần. In older dynasties, women and men both wore simple colored cross-collar robes called áo yào lân under white silk pants. For a northern farmer girl look, pair a red bodice with a brown sash and pants called áo tứ thân. If you're feeling more southern, or as the kids say, con gái miền Tây, just cut your áo dài short. After measuring my body and waiting for the package to arrive, I found my community. We filmed fashion hauls, showed off our sketches, and provided design tips. These are people in the same boat as me, overseas Vietnamese who want to reconnect to their culture without regard to political affiliation. This is when I realized that to wear traditional clothing in America is to showcase your culture with pride. Throughout history, my people have gone through thick and thin to make it to where it is today. In those events, we developed our identity through clothing, showcasing the gems of our culture beyond the wounds of war. My Crimson Dragon áo tắc sits in a corner of my closet most times, but on cultural holidays, and for today, I dress to impress. I'm Vietnamese after all. Thank you.
thank you very much, Andy, for your speech. And because I'm one of judge, I need to be neutral. And then we're going to thank you. And then another applause, the round of applause for Andy Tran. And the second contestant, his name is Brandon Shin. He's the 9th grade, and he attending Peachtree Ridge High School. Welcome, Brandon.
Thank you so much. Hello, everyone. My name is Brandon Shin, and as she just said, I'm from Peachtree Ridge High School as a freshman. I would like to begin by saying that it is an immense honor to be speaking before you today, and I feel like it is a very important and momentous occasion that we can gather together like this and show our support for consolidarity within our community. So without further ado, this is my article, or my speech, 3 Names and a Single Identity, Brandon Shin. Once upon a time, in the vibrant and sunny streets of Suwanee, Georgia, there lived a boy named Brandon. But let's not get ahead of ourselves. And everyone here today can rest easy in their seats, because unless you're into that sort of thing, you don't need to picture me dancing happily around in a meadow of daffodils. Now, if you're American and you've asked for my name, I'd simply say to you, Brandon. And if you're Asian, well, surprise, it's still Brandon. Although Brandon is a very American name, you might ask me if I speak Korean or Chinese due to my Korean and Chinese heritage. The truth is, no. I was born and raised in Georgia for all of my 15 years as a native English speaker and as a full Asian American. To this, you might respond, I see. And I'd reply, I know. It's like a dance that we do, a polite acknowledgement of our shared confusement. But sometimes I'll catch a glimpse of something in your eyes that I can't quite understand. Is this a language gap? Is this a wisp of disappointment that we don't share the same cultural background? Is it because you're struggling to understand my charming Southern accent? Regardless, I've come to embrace my slightly unique heritage. After all, I've been blessed with 3 roots, and as a result, 3 names. Brandon, American, Lukai, Chinese, and Minsu, Korean. It's like having multiple identities without actually having the hassle of having a split personality. So in any case, nice to meet you all today. I'm Brandon Shin. In many places, including Suwanee, Georgia, Asians don't usually have intermixed families like mine, even if we do share some common outward characteristics. Why, you may ask? Well, I would say it's like mixing oil and water, or in this case, kung pao chicken and kimchi. There are plenty of Asian ethnic groups in our community. We often interact in schools and workplaces, but at the end of the day, we tend to gravitate towards our own cultural circles. It's not that we exclude others intentionally, but it's often comforting to connect with people who might share similar backgrounds and experiences. For example, some Chinese families might speak Chinese at home, while Korean families may attend a Korean church, like my dad just did, or like my dad once did. As I was raised with both American and Asian influence, I hadn't had much exposure to certain Korean cultural elements, such as a Korean community's church. However, this changed when a friend invited me to a Korean American Christian church. And so I take my first few steps into this Korean church. It's a medium-sized building on the corner of a suburban shopping strip. Of course, the area is dominated by various K restaurants, just like a delicious boba tea shop, similar to the one that so graciously gave us all free boba today during our meal. As I make my way to the gathering room, the pastor, a young Korean man with black glasses and a trim haircut, greets me warmly. Despite his friendliness, I can't help but wonder if I'll stick out like a sore thumb in this sea of familiarity. The word hello is followed by plenty of friendly handshaking. Hi, Brandon, nice to meet you. I'm Peter, says the friendly pastor. I replied back in English, hello, nice to meet you too. Despite being at least 99% Asian, I only speak English, and neither of my parents want otherwise. I've been asked many times about why I don't speak Korean or Chinese, and I always reply with the same thing. I was born in America, and my parents want me to be American. Fair is fair, and people don't usually probe further. The pastor asked me the usual question about speaking Korean, and after some additional back and forth questions, he frees me to take a look around for myself. It doesn't take long for me to find those around my age. They're easily distinguishable, with heavy K influence in the way they talk and dress. Now, in the American school system, which I'm sure many of you are familiar with, these are your typical Asian students with just a few in each classroom. In a Korean church, this is the major demographic. I take a seat on the floor next to some of my new acquaintances and watch the church process with keen interest. And so I sit and listen to the pastor lecture about the religious string of mortal life and the afterlife. The first 2 centimeters, he says, of the string represents our time here on earth. And the rest of this nearly endless piece of string on the other side should not be sacrificed just for a measly 2 centimeters. Now, this is a pretty interesting metaphor I ponder silently to myself. The service moves on, and I find myself mouthing the words to a Christian song that I didn't know. In terms of music production, the room contains a mic, a drum set, and a guitar. Some of the teens have roles strumming or banging to the beat. Regardless, my feet go numb after the 12th verse, and relief courses through my veins as the song finishes. As the final notes of the song fade, I come to the realization on that floor that no matter which world I walked in, Korean or Chinese, I would not be alone in my journey. Despite my initial apprehensions about fitting in or whatnot, I realized that although we may come from different backgrounds, cultures, or religions, we are all connected by the humanity that we share together. In a world that is often divided by race, ethnicity, or culture, together we see the beauty of our heritage and how life is not just about fitting in or conforming to expectations. Instead, we choose to celebrate who we are. Thank you, everybody.
Let's give it up, Brandon Shin. All right, my third and the last contestant is Doris Vo. She goes to Collins Hill High School, and she is in 11th grade. Please welcome Doris Vo.
Hello, everyone. I hope you guys' evening are going great, wonderful, even though I feel a little sad because of the victim's family and keynote speakers. But I have a few questions to ask. How many of us here have experienced discrimination before? There are plenty of us here. How many of us here have experienced where you feel like you didn't quite fit into the environment? There's also a lot of us here. But this is why I'm here to give a speech for you guys. And I will begin now. Your accent is so heavy. I couldn't understand you at all. This simple statement, cutting through the air felt like a dagger, stabbing a deep hole into my heart. Even though I thought my words were clear enough to convey my message, I froze for a moment, anxiety taking hold. Was my accent really that bad? I anxiously asked, desperately hoping a response that would soften the blow. The answer? Delivered with a blunt honesty was a cold yes, devoid of any conflicting explanations. I felt empty. It was as if a storm had swept through, leaving behind a desolate landscape of shattered confidence and fragments of my ego. When I arrived home, I couldn't help but burst into two streams of tears. I found myself sinking into the bed, grappling with the harshness of reality. In that moment, I lay there, contemplating about the journey that led me to this point. Each tear a poignant reminder of the struggle etched into my story. I vividly recall facing a similar feelings after my first day of 7th grade in American school. I didn't know English, I didn't know where to go, I didn't have any friends. Overwhelmingly hard to cope with, I finally found my first period class. I took a deep breath, hoping that when I walked into the classroom, I'll be met with welcoming smiles and open arms because in my mind at that time, America was a land of happiness, the land of freedom, and the land where everyone accepted each other's differences. But reality struck harder than I could have imagined. The faces remained indifferent, staring at me hard with a hardening gaze, and hardly anyone offered a smile to the new student in class. A moment later, a boy with a charming smile came to my table. Was he going to say hi to me? Was he going to ask me my friend? I realized that we're all wishful thinking when the first thing he said was, "Go back to your country." Confused and unable to respond his words due to my lack of English knowledge at that time, I sat there, a stranger in a foreign land, grappling with the harshest of reality. Who am I in this country? Should I really go back to my country? These questions haunted my mind for days after the incident, tormenting my thoughts. I dwelt on how out of place I felt in this new environment. I didn't talk like them. I didn't dress like them. I didn't adhere to the idea of the American way. The dissonance became a constant reminder of my perceived inadequacy. In an attempt to fit the mold, I started buying more clothes that mirrored a typical American teenager's wardrobe. I committed to studying English for 3 hours every day after school, yearning to adopt an American accent, which obviously didn't work. I began to overhaul every aspect of myself. At times, I found myself immersed in YouTube videos, observing tips on how to embody what they deemed a quintessential American. It felt like I was slowly erasing my Vietnamese cultural identity. A sacrifice made in the pursuit of acceptance, the longing to belong led me down a path of self-alteration as I battled the internal conflict between preserving my roots or assimilating into a culture that seemed to demand conformity. But are those changes necessarily bad when you move to a new country? No, they are not bad at all. I found myself fitting in better as I learned how to communicate in English, making more friends than ever since I first moved here. However, the one thing that still bothers me about trying to be more American is my accent. People still point it out, saying that I sound very Vietnamese. My little me hated it. I used to spend hours speaking any English passage I found on Google to perfect my voice, but nothing changed. They can still hear it, and it haunted me. But in the struggle to love what I couldn't change, I discovered acceptance. Now, I have to accept that accent is a part of who I am. People recognize me by it. And it is what makes me unique. Realizing that my accent, a piece of my culture, is actually a beautiful aspect. It's been a journey. Now, I not only accept it, but genuinely love every part of my accent. To all those who ever felt like they didn't quite fit into the environment, to those wrestling with accepting facets of their identity, remember this: our differences are our strength. If everyone was the same, then the world would be a much boring place. We were all giving pieces of our cultural identity to make us stand out from others. And each time someone embraces it, the world gets that much more interesting. Together, let's build a world where every voice, every heritage is not only accepted, but cherished. Thank you so much for listening.
Let's give it up to the vote is full. So after a panelist discussion tonight, my committee, Atlanta Korean American Committee Against Asian Hate, will present $500 scholarship to the winner after this discussion. Now, I would like to invite Lina Ho, the president of the Gwinnett Asian American Student Association. Please welcome Lina.
Thank you so much. Hello, everyone. It's really nice to see you. As Michelle said, my name is Lina Ho, and I'm a 12th grader at Peachtree Ridge High School. I am the 2023-2024 president of the Gwinnett Asian American Student Association, also known as GASA. We were one of the student organizers for this event and representing Asian youth. GASA is a student-run, county-wide organization dedicated to celebrating and spreading awareness for our Asian American cultural heritage. GASA is affiliated with 19 different Gwinnett County high schools. If you're a student or a parent of a student, chances are your school has its own Asian cultural club that runs independently but comes together with other schools in GASA to create beautiful social events. These student leaders from across the county work together to do both year-round culturally inclusive events that foster community bonds while also doing meaningful volunteer and awareness work such as today's event. If you're interested in getting involved or supporting GASA, whether you're a parent, student, or community member, please feel free to talk to me. With that said, it is my pleasure to present today's panelists who will be speaking about their experience as an Asian American student in Georgia. First up, we have Doris Vo, an 11th grader from Collins Hill High School, who just spoke. She is a Vietnamese immigrant and the GASA president for the 2024-2025 school year. Next, we have Youngjin Kim, an 11th grader from Mill Creek High School. She is Korean American and the GASA internal vice president for the 24-25 school year. Next, we have Leonardo Choi, an 11th grader from the Gwinnett School of Mathematics, Science, and Technology. He is Korean American and the GASA external vice president for the 2024-25 school year. Our final two panelists are not directly involved with GASA, but have done some amazing work today as student organizers as well. We have Mehek Saha, an 11th grader from the Gwinnett School of Mathematics, Science, and Technology. She is Indian Bengali and is passionate about representing student voice in politics, shown by her work with the United Nations Institute for Training and Research. Finally, we have Tyler Lee, an 11th grader from Peachtree Ridge High School. He is very involved in the community, supports elected public officials, and is a gun safety advocate. Please help me give a warm welcome to our panelists today.
Thank you very much, Lena, for your introduction. So this is our second part, panelist discussion with Asian American students. So we sent out the questions, and each student going to speak the specific questions. So our first question is, what is the most difficulty you have experienced both at school and at home as children of Asian immigrants?
So I'm also an immigrant, and I just moved here like 4 years ago during the middle of pandemic. So at school, like the first day of school, I experienced some discrimination, like go back to your country. And the second time that I experienced some racism was in 8th grade. I was trying to grab my lunch, trying to find a table, like get a chair and sit down, trying to eat my lunch. And once I sat down, a guy across me started standing up, switching his seat and telling his friends like, that girl has coronavirus, so you should like get on the new table. I stared at them really hard because like, what are you doing? And at that time, I listened to English, but I couldn't speak any, so I just like sat there and stared at them. And the second thing that I experienced like some difficulty was at home, because my parents are also immigrants, so they do really have high expectations for me at school, like get all straight A's, be a good student, and get into the Texas like your brother. I understand his perspective, like my dad, because he's also a normal worker at some factories. So he said like, education is a really important thing that you can have for your life. First, it can elevate you to a higher social class. The second thing, you can help yourself and help the people around you with a higher education. I understand his perspective, but at the same time, he told me that every single day, so I really feel stressed about that. And that are some of my difficulties when I experience when I'm at home when both at school as an immigrant and as a child, like parents immigrants.
Thank you very much, Doris, for your answer. And our second question is, how do you think and feel about instructional materials or resources? Are they inclusive and representative? Do you see yourself in textbooks?
Good afternoon. My name is Leo Choi, and I think before I answer the question, there needs to be a little bit more context about what I've learned. So far at school, I've taken AP US History, AP World History, AP Euro History, and I've looked into courses on AP African Studies. Now, for a nation that prides itself on being a representative country of all types of races and all types of people that accepts anyone from any country, and a nation that has no national language because there's too many languages to count because there's too many people from different places. I feel like there's a lack of Asian representation in any kind of studies. There's no AP Asian history. There's no discussions of Asians in any world history classes focusing on it. There's short units, like 2 days on Japan during World War II, or Asia during the rice and things like that, like focusing on small, minute details on how there was little impact. But there's hours and days on American scientists, European scientists. And it's not that there's not enough history of Asians to talk about. There's way more history in Asia than there is in America. Asia's been here for a very long time, and I feel like there's little to no representation in Asia. There's no discussion of scientists from Asia. We've had discoveries as well. We've talked about things as well, and we've found things that others haven't found as well, yet there's no discussion of it.
Thank you very much, Rio, for your answers. And Youngjin has another one.
So I'm Youngjin, and I also feel that there is a lack of representation of Asians within history and the instructional materials that we see. I'm also taking AP US History, and like Leo said, there's not a lot about Asian history within AP US History, even though Asians have been living in the US since the 19th century. Asians are a key cornerstone in US history, yet we're barely talked about. And the worst part is that I feel that even though we are highly underrepresented in AP US History, this is still the most representation I have seen of Asians throughout all my years of education, even though I think that it is vital that people are taught about Asian history from a young age, so that young Asian children can feel represented, feel included, because I know when I was in elementary school, I was learning about all these great historical figures like Thomas Jefferson, George Washington, Abe Lincoln, but none of them were like me, and I felt a disconnect from the history that I was learning. I didn't feel like I had any place in US history. I didn't know who I could look up to, and I think it's vital that every young Asian American student has somebody they can look up to, and I think it's also vital that people who aren't Asian can broaden their horizons, and this might even help combat racism, because as we know, racism is something that is taught. It's not something that we are inherently born with. And I also feel that with the representation that's within history right now for Asians, there needs to be more nuance, because the representation we have right now is painting the picture that Asians are kind of this outsider, this foreign thing, because my friend, up until now, she did not know about Japanese internment camps, even though she knew extensively about the Pearl Harbor bombing. And by not adding these nuances, Asians are alienated, and we can see this in real life. After the 9/11 attacks, there was an uptick in Muslim hate crimes, and had there been more representation for Muslims within history, we might not have seen this. And we even see this hatred in laws, such as the Muslim travel ban that appeared a couple years ago. And I think it's just vital that we learn about this history so we can combat racism.
Thank you very much, Youngjin and Leo, for your answer to the question about the inclusivity and the equity of the Asian American history in school curriculum. And our third question is about gun violence, and how do you think about gun violence and its safety controls? Do you feel safe going to school?
Yeah, so I got stuck with a tough question, but I'm going to stand when I answer it. So, 안녕하세요. That's about all the Korean I know, but I'm very appreciative of all the people that have gathered today. And so the question being what we think about gun violence, especially as Asian Americans, and how I feel going to school. You know, in Gwinnett County Public Schools, we have close to 200,000 students and 25,000 members of staff. And they do their best. I believe Gwinnett County Public Schools is one of the best school systems in the state of Georgia. But we do see people and things slip through the cracks. We've seen firearms come to school. We've seen knives, stabbings, drug deals going on. And so there's a lot that's affecting our Asian American youth and the way we feel about going to school. Personally, me, I love going to school. You know, I know not every kid says that, but I love going to school. It's an experience. But that changes when we see acts of gun violence happen at schools, at churches, synagogues, public gathering events. That all changes when we see it. And when we saw the March 16th shooting happen in 2021, it changed everything because, you know, you always see these events happen on the news and you never feel connected to them. It might happen in Buffalo, New York, or San Francisco in California, but it happened here in the state of Georgia, in Atlanta. And I have to say, I was shocked when that happened, you know? The victims, they looked just like members of my family. They looked like my grandmother. And I couldn't stay silent on it because it spoke to me. It was such a violent attack that was perpetrated against our community. And so to get into the call to action, you know, how do I feel about gun violence? Well, it's awful, of course, but some people end the conversation there. There needs to be more done concerning gun violence because it's an issue. We're seeing it right now. The whole reason why we have to have this event to commemorate and grieve is because, yes, there was a gunman that legally purchased a firearm, but he purchased it hours before committing that crime. There are multiple proven ways that we can pass through legislation that would change the way things happened. If there had been a waiting period, if there had been a court order, a red flag law that enabled law enforcement to take the firearms of a mentally unstable individual who we can see through social media postings and past behavior. Something should have been done. You know, I'm tired of seeing this happen. I'm tired of this becoming normalized. This is not normal at all, and it should never feel as if it's a part of our culture or part of anyone's experience. And I want to, you know, I want to apologize for all of those that have been affected by gun violence. I personally do not know what that experience feels like, but I see it too much, and I cannot imagine what anyone afflicted by this violence has gone through, and so I apologize. And again, a lot of people end the discussion there. There needs to be something done. And so a lot of the calls to action that I have propositioned forward, I host an annual press conference outside the Gwinnett County Courthouse to address gun violence. We need our lawmakers to act. We need a governor, a state house, and a state senate that are willing to protect people that look like you and I and others, you know? Gwinnett County is a beautiful, diverse mosaic of people from all across the world. And we deserve to be protected by comprehensive gun safety legislation. You know, I don't mean to be dramatic, but what if one of us on this stage became a victim? It's very likely, and it needs to be addressed through legislation. And I feel as if, you know, with the way our current system is going and with the way we are allowing this to happen, it could very well be a possibility. You know, when I was a freshman at Peachtree Ridge High School, we saw a very serious gun scare that evacuated the whole school. You know, it's the culture we live in. It's the proaction we have to take because it very well could happen. And so I'll end it here. I know I've talked a lot, but action needs to be taken to ensure our communities are safe, you know? And I applaud the elected officials in this room that have done the work and have done the time or dedicated the time to ensuring that guns are properly and safely stored, that criminals that seek to apply for a weapon aren't able to get it through a loophole or without background checks. But it all means nothing if all of them don't work together. And so my call to them is this, you know, gun violence does not discriminate. It could affect anyone in this room, and it has affected people in this room. When one person is shot, there's more than just that one person that is affected. It ripples, you know? When one person is hurt, everyone is hurt. And I will tell them this at the State House, you know, if they don't change their ways, we'll change them out, you know? There's no reason why second graders and the Second Amendment can't be in the same discussion. We should be able to protect both. And so I feel as if there needs to be something done. And I'm looking forward to continue advocating for firearm safety and showing them at the Capitol that it matters and it affects all of us. Because when one person is hurt, all of us are hurt. And so thank you for that question.
Thank you, Tyler, for your very elegant speech about our common sense gun law. And our last question, Mehak, how do you envision our community? What future would you like to bring?
Hello, everyone. My name is Mahek Saha, and it is my pleasure to be speaking in front of all of you today. And when I think back to March 16th, 3 years ago, I think that there was undeniably a tear that was made in our community, in our Asian community here in Gwinnett and in Georgia, when we lost 8 people, 6 of them being Asian women. So I envision a community where we stand in solidarity, not just in solidarity with our victims, but also in solidarity with the fact that we cannot allow this to happen again. I envision a future where we understand that the United States does not simply have more violent people, more dangerous people. We are not inherently more prone to violence. However, we are the only developed nation that has this level of mass violence erupt with this frequency. That is not disputed, and that needs to change. I envision a future where we no longer allow this to be a polarized topic, but rather one of humanity, one that requires action now. I believe as students, as the future leaders of our generation, we have a duty to hold these ideals in our heart and to use them for change. I envision a future where we hold these ideals and we use them for change, not just in this room, but as we continue to make our strides in politics, where we are students who are not afraid to involve ourselves in politics and to make the change that we know we are here to do. And lastly, I envision a future where we hold these ideals in our heart and we understand that constraints on our freedom are necessary and they are required to protect innocent people, constraints that should have been implemented on March 16th, 3 years ago. I envision a future where we stand together, where we stand for action, where we stand for change, and we stand for solidarity. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Mehek. And this is for student panelist discussion. Oh, Liza, and then let's take a picture together. Thank you very much. And now it's time to present $500 scholarship. Chairman Kim Baek-gyu, and then our committee member Kim Sung-gap-님, please come forward to the stage. So we discussed who will be the winner for the speech contest, and our winner is Andy Tran. Congratulations, Andy.
Congratulations, and thank you so much to the Atlanta Korean American Community Against Asian Hate for sponsoring the speech contest.
All right, thank you very much all student participation, student panelists, and then student performers, and student organizers, and student, but time is all about student and our future and our Asian American student. Thank you very much, everything. We stand together.
Thank you. And now we would like to present a very special musical tribute from 3 members of the Mill Creek High School Orchestra. We have the talented Victoria John, 12th grade, on the violin. Isabel Shin, 11th grade, on cello. and Joyce 11th grade on viola, performing Stand By Me and Rise Up by Andra Day. Take it away, ladies. Thank you so much. Again, to our string trio, Isabel, Victoria, and Joyce. And now, as we approach the finale of the evening, we would like everybody at the tables to turn on your candle tea lights at your table. And if we could lower the lights in the audience while we have our final violin soloist of the evening to come up. We have Lucas Liu. Lucas is a very gifted and award-winning musician, only a 10th grade student at Westminster School. He is the Associate Concertmaster of the Atlanta Symphony Youth Orchestra. And as we have him prepare to play his first piece, Lucas, come on out. We invite the audience to hold your candles up, and we approach our final vigil. And Lucas will be playing Bach Violin, Partita number 2 in D minor, the Allemande. And as he starts to play, if we could have our audience members start coming up to the front of the stage and stand on the steps. If our volunteers would help guide our members to come up to the stage and line yourselves up, holding your candles and facing out into the audience. And Lucas, we begin to play for our vigil. Thank you so much, Lucas. And Victoria Nguyen will lead us in a call to action.
As we stand together, we issue our call to action to our audience members, to those watching on live stream, to our communities who are also mourning at home, and to our allies and community leaders and community partners. We are asking you to support us, to stand with us, and to stand together. For not only the family members that we have lost, the family members that are still grieving, that are still recovering from their injuries, and for the future, like our high school students, and just like the little one right here. We want to stand together so we can raise our AAPI, ANHPI voices by voting in our upcoming elections here in Georgia on May 21st and November 5th. Can we say stand together? Stand together. We will engage with our civic leaders and our elected officials so that they can hear the needs and the challenges of our communities and listen to the recommendations of our communities, because we cannot talk about Stop API Hate without talking about the resources, the love and the support for our Asian American, Native Hawaiian, Pacific Islander communities. Can we say stand together? Stand together. Volunteer with nonprofit organizations, civil rights organizations. Show up to hearings to speak up against these anti-immigrant, anti-minority, anti-Muslim, so many of our communities. And we need to show up and speak out. Can we say stand together? Can we invite and share our stories? Join groups like AAPI, I Belong, and share the stories of our communities, the stories of our families, to make sure that our voices are never unheard or invisible. We say stand together. And let's stand together so that our voices can be heard, that we continue to be visible, that we are represented, and that our communities will stand strong for the future of the Asian American and Native Hawaiian Pacific Islander communities. Bonnie, I'll send it back to you.
Yes, if we could please turn on the lights so that we can see our entire beautiful community all together for one giant group photo. Thank you everyone for making this event such a huge success. May the power and memory of March 16th be always with us. We wanted to give a special shout out to all our volunteers and March 16th Remembrance Committee organizers. Let's give them all a wonderful hand. Woo! And thank you once again to our sponsors, speakers, fantastic performers, media guests, and all of you for attending and joining us for this third anniversary March 16th commemoration event. We invite you to leave with wonderful memories, holding this in your hearts, and we offer to you a commemorative t-shirt and our stickers, and please take the beautiful art of Amanda Pongboripakya with you. Thank you. I say stand, you say together. Stand.
Together.
Stand.
Together.
Raise your hands. Stand together. Thank you, everyone. Woo!
Please stay where you're at for a group photo. Danya! Quiet, come here. All right, if we can come in a little bit, I think we are too wide. Where's the cutoff point? Is there a cutoff point on each side? Okay. Okay, got it. Let us know, Mr. Steve. Woo! We would like to invite all the students, the panelists, and the essay winners to join us on the stage.